Surrey Sound in conversation.
Hello, I'm Tess Lucy, and today I'm in conversation with local actor and puppeteer Joseph Booton.
Hello, I'm Joseph Booton, and I'm an actor and Punch and Judy puppeteer.
We've spoken before a few years ago. Let's just do a quick recap. Has acting always come naturally to you?
Well, it wasn't something that I thought I was any good at, and I think it started when I was at school and a teacher came up to my mum and said, "Oh, do you know that your son's quite good at acting?" It was a result of the school play we did. I think it was Joseph and His Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Unfortunately, although my name is Joseph, I wasn't actually the lead. I think I was one of the chorus of shepherds with tea towels on my head. I remember that. And it's just something that I've always enjoyed doing, and something I've wanted to pursue later on in life, which is what I've done.
So drama school wasn't for you, and you went on to uni instead. Why was this?
I made a conscious decision when I was deciding what to do after college, sixth form college, that I wanted to go to university and not drama school. And I'm not saying that drama school isn't the right option to go if you want to go on to be an actor. But for me personally, I wanted to get more of what I would consider to be a well-rounded education. So at drama school, you're with the same people for 3 years. University, you're mixing with all sorts of different people from all sorts of different backgrounds, all sorts of different subjects as well. So I feel you get more of a rounded education, as it were. And also, I was very fortunate. The university I went to, and I chose it specifically for this reason, which is Royal Holloway. It's part of the University of London. It's based in Egham. Has a fantastic drama society, both through the Students' Union and then the Drama Workshop, which is the departmental run drama group. And we did such great productions there. Things like Volpone, Oedipus, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and every year there was always a pantomime as well that the local RAG group would organise, which is for charity. So there were lots of opportunities to do practical elements as well as the academic element, and obviously as part of the course there were practical elements as well. So I didn't feel that I missed out on that training aspect because there were lots of opportunities to perform, and then you obviously had that academic underpinning as well, which is what I really liked about the university course, and I'm really glad I chose that route as opposed to going to drama school.
For someone like myself who hasn't got a clue, what is the difference between drama school and university? Is it because the university is more academic?
Traditionally, drama schools are all about developing yourself physically as an actor. So there's a lot of mentality of breaking you down as an individual, overcoming your personal inhibitions, and building you up from scratch to become an actor. Whereas with university, it's more about developing your academic outlook on acting. So studying text, studying different acting theories, which you also do at drama school as well, but it's more of an academic study, and there is obviously practical elements to it as well. But you do things like puppetry, theatre and education, different areas that you wouldn't necessarily touch on at drama school. There is what's the word I'm looking for? There's a stereotype. That's the word I'm looking for. There's a stereotype of drama schools that it's a lot of very poncy, fancy, being a tree for 3 years and getting in touch with your inner, emotional sides and states and things like this. And that is true to some extent. The thing I have with drama schools is that I feel that a lot of people who come out of drama schools are just cookie cutters. We talk about the music industry of the boy bands all looking the same, the girl bands all looking the same because they've all gone through that studio process. And to some degree, and there are a lot of people who will argue against this, but personally I feel that to some degree it's the same with drama schools as well. You can normally tell when you go see a show who's been to drama school and who hasn't, not because that those who've been to drama school are better, but because there's almost like a sameness about them all. And I think when you go to university, you're encouraged to challenge and think for yourself, and as a result when you come out of university you are very much individuals. And when you go to drama school, of course you're all individuals, but you've gone through that same process, that same training, that same breaking you down and building you up again. And for me it's a bit too formulaic, so that's why I liked university. But I'm not saying that not going to drama school is not the way to go. It's different for different people, depends what you want to get out of it.
As I say quite often, each to their own.
Absolutely, each to their own. And for me personally, university was a much better option than going to drama school.
So you spent some time in America studying film acting, and you also had a couple of roles in comedy shows out there.
Yes, so I spent 2 years in America, 1 year studying, 1 year working. I was very fortunate. I had lead roles in 2 feature films out there, low budget feature films. So the definition of low budget is anything that's got a budget of $2 million or less. That sounds a lot of money, but actually when you're making a film, that soon goes very quickly. So I had a lead role in 2 of those comedy films, and they were released in the US and in Australasia and Asia and Europe as well. And they're on things like Netflix and Love Film.
What was it like being a British actor in America?
It's quite interesting in the sense that a lot of people view you in a way that you wouldn't imagine. So by that I mean you are pigeonholed into, as a British actor, either being the bad guy or someone who's only good for doing period pieces. So it's quite difficult actually to overcome that. But that's their initial perception of you. A bit like really, as a stereotype, the British people think the Americans are quite loud and obnoxious, and of course they're not, but that's how we perceive them as a nation. And when it comes to the Americans viewing the British actors, they think we're fantastic at Shakespeare. We can do any period roles like Downton Abbey without even needing to have any training, because that's just who we are. And we're also, for some reason, I don't know where this comes from, the perfect choice of playing the bad guy. So that's something you have to overcome. That's not something I experienced a lot myself, but that is a general view that's held, I think, a lot of the time. And there's lots of other actresses, like I think it was Helen Mirren. It may even been someone else, but I think it was her who did an interview recently, and she said, that is the problem with Hollywood as a British actor going there. That's what you will get cast in a lot, the bad guy or the period dramas. But it's great. Another thing is that you have a uniqueness. Immediately, I think the Americans view British actors as being incredibly good as actors, and that's just a presumption that they have. You could never have gone to drama school or never had any training, go over there, just say you're an actor, and I think immediately they give you a lot of respect. You initially get that, which is great, and also they have a lot of time for you, and you're something different as well. It's all about your unique selling point, really. And the Americans love the British. They love the accent. They love that. So that's really good for helping you get your foot in the door. So they have a lot of time for you, which is nice. You're not just another, like you are in this country, you're not just another British actor trying to compete with lots of other British actors in London. You are somewhat of a unique package. I mean, there are lots of other British actors out in America trying to make a living as well, so you aren't completely unique, but you have that unique selling point as well, something that people remember you by, which is nice.
Yeah, a lot of the Australians seem to end up in America as well, don't they?
Yes, well, I mean, fortunately or not fortunately, depends how you want to look at it. I mean, whether you agree with it or not, the fact is that Hollywood is the capital of the filmmaking industry, and that is where most of the work is. I'm not saying it's where most of the substantial work is, but it's where most of the work is. And a lot of people, a lot of actors from all over the world are going to naturally be drawn to Hollywood because that's where a lot of the work is. And obviously they're going to go for people for whom English is a native language. So outside of America, really, you've got the British, and you've got the Australians and the Canadians, of course, as well. And then anything outside of that, I think it's... I mean, you do have the people who buck the trend, like Penelope Cruz and Marion Cotillard, who aren't native English speakers, but speak very well, but they still have an accent, but they've carved that niche out for them. And it's a lot harder, I think, if English isn't your mother tongue, as it would be, for a British actor or an American actor to go over to Germany and try and make a living in the German film industry or any other country. It's difficult, and you're always going to be viewed as having an accent, because don't forget, to the Americans, everyone has an accent, but they don't have an accent themselves, of course. So when you do come from another country, one of the good things that you can have under your belt when I say you come from another country, what I mean is you come from another country and it's not America, is that you can perfect the American accent. And sometimes when you go into audition, it's actually better to go in and have on your CV that you can do the British accent, but actually go in initially doing the American accent, not to trick them, but because it's a lot harder if you say you're British and then they go, okay, do your American accent, for you to do your American accent and then for them to be convinced. It's a lot easier if you can go in doing an American accent and then they say, oh, so I understand you're British, and then you go into British and they're all like, oh, wow, okay. So that's something that's quite useful to have under your belt.
Right, I'm with you now.
Surrey Sound in conversation.
Hello, I'm Tess Lucy, and today I'm in conversation with local actor and puppeteer Joseph Booton. Would you say it takes different skills to act a comedy role to say maybe something more serious?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think skills are generic across all genres, and I think there is a certain underlying standard that you have to be able to access a range of emotions that allow you to play any. But to answer your question, I don't think it takes different skills in some respect, because one of the key things about when you do drama is actually not playing it as some sort of deep, emotional, tragic scene. And people will argue against this, but to always find the comedy in everything. There's comedy in everything. And actually, I think a lot of the time when we are really angry, or when we're really frustrated, or when we're really upset, or when we feel really uncomfortable and vulnerable and exposed, especially the British, I think we actually try and cover that with comedy. We try and humorise the situation to take the emotional impact out of it. So I think actually when you're doing a scene that's quite emotionally intense, and you could describe that as drama or romance or a thriller or whatever, it's always quite interesting to try and find the comedy in that, and that makes it actually a bit more interesting to watch when an actor is playing against them. So what they're saying doesn't correspond with what you're seeing on screen. If someone's blubbing their eyes out, it's a lot more interesting, I think, as a viewer to hear them try and make a joke of the situation or deny that they're upset, rather than going, oh, woe is me, I'm so upset. You can see you're upset, but I think people in real life never really say that. They always try and cover that up, don't they? Oh, I've got something in my eye, or they make a joke.
Yes.
So I think actually comedy is really important, because you need it obviously to play comedy, but you also bring it into the other aspects as well. I think it's a lot harder if you can only do drama and serious acting to then go into comedy. But when you've got the comedy nailed, I think that's an applicable skill.
What is the difference then between film acting and theatre acting, or is there a difference?
Yes, there is a big difference. The main difference is the size of the shot, as it were. So when you're doing film, it's very much close up and intimate. The viewer's getting sort of a looking through the keyhole perspective, eavesdropping in on a conversation perspective. Whereas when you're on theatre, obviously there is that with the whole fourth wall idea. But with theatre, it's about projection. It's about big performances. You've got to perform to the person right at the back of the room, as well as the person right in front of you. When you're doing film work, one of the things they say, and there's a variety of things they say, and you can contest each one, but one of the main things they say when you're doing film acting is you're performing to the camera. The camera is your audience. So you're not doing big gestures and performing to the back of the room. It's a lot smaller. So they often say that it's easier for theatre actors to go into film than it is for film actors to go into theatre. And the reason for that is because when you, stereotyping here, but as a theatre actor, big performance, lots of projection, it's easy to ask someone to rein that in and make it a bit of a smaller, more intimate performance, which fits well for camera, for film work, than it is for someone who's only done film work, who's used to doing very small, intimate performances, to then go onto the theatre and then to have to project right to the back of the room. So they're two very different skill sets.
And have you got a favourite?
I would probably have to say push come to shove theatre, only because you get that immediate response to the work you're doing. Obviously when it's on film, you don't know what's going to happen until the film's released, and even then you're not sitting there with the people in the cinema watching it. You've only got the reviews to go by. With theatre, it's a live performance. You get the energy of the audience there, you get the laughs when you're doing the work, you can play off the audience as well. It just works a lot nicer, especially for comedy, because I think when you're doing comedy, you need the laughs to know if it's funny or not and what's working. And you don't get that when you're filming, but when you're in front of a theatre audience, absolutely you do. With drama, not so much, because you don't really get that audience reaction in terms of laughing, and it's not as immediate. It's still a great buzz.
Since we last spoke, you've done 6 productions at the Archway Theatre in Hawley, the most recent being earlier this year. Can you tell me a bit about these productions, please?
The Archway Theatre is in Hawley. It's a lovely little theatre under the arches. If you haven't been, I really encourage you to go along. It's a 95-seat theatre. It puts on 10 full productions a year. And I've been very fortunate to be able to do 6 productions there in the last 3 years. The last one I did was called Stones in His Pockets, which is a very unique play in that there's only 2 actors in the whole play, and we play between us 16 different characters, and there's about, I've lost count, I think there's about 4 or 5 different accents we have to do. So we're doing different characters, different accents, and it's just the 2 of us for the full hour and a half. And it's a lot of work. It's a fantastic play. I saw it up in London when I was at school, actually, and I thought, this is something I've always wanted to do. And it was such a great performance to do. It was also quite special because the Little Theatre Guild, which is a guild of over 100 small theatres all over the country that own or lease the theatres that they put their productions on. So it's not drama groups just hiring a village hall or something like that. It's you actually own or lease the theatre, proper theatre that you put your productions on in. To be a member of the Little Theatre Guild, every year they have an annual general meeting, and this year the national AGM, or the national conference as it were, was held at the Archway Theatre in Hawley. So we had delegates from all over the United Kingdom come to Hawley, and one of the performances that we did was to the delegates for the Little Theatre Guild, of which Ian McKellen is the chair and Judy Dench is the patron of the theatre itself. So it's quite a nice little theatre to have, and something for the community to go and watch really good quality productions without having to go up to London. As I said, it's 10 different productions a year they put on there, and each production has 10 performances over 2 weeks. So the last one I did was Stones in His Pockets, which was very well received and a lot of hard work. And I've also done the previous year Amadeus, which is about the life of Mozart. So I played Mozart in that. That was a really, really interesting production to be involved in, and a lot of listeners may have seen the film from the 1980s. I think it was 1984. Don't quote me on that. It might be 1984, 1985, which is a fantastic production. The stage production by Peter Schaffer has gone through, I think, 5 or 6 different revisions. So he did his latest revision, and it's just been on in London as well. So it's a fantastic production.
Can I ask, in the production where there was 2 of you playing various different people, did you ever forget which character you were playing?
Yes. You don't let the audience know that. It's very tricky because when you learn your lines, you always learn them in a way that you learn your line and you know that the line after that is someone else on stage. And you take your cue line, that is the cue for you to speak, from someone else speaking. Yeah. So you learn your lines and you learn your cue lines as well. With Stones in His Pockets, the way it's written is that when you finish saying your line, the next line could actually be your line, but as another character. So not only have you got to remember your lines, you've got to remember which character you are when you're saying those lines, what accent you're doing when you say those lines, where you're standing on stage, and if once you finish saying your line, the next line is actually you, but as another character. So you can't just go on this like a tennis match back and forth rally. That's what is mostly the case when you have plays where there's only 2 people in, and there aren't a lot of those. It's more a back and forth, but because you're multi-rolling as characters, it's so difficult. So yeah, I did get confused. Luckily on the nights, when we did the run of 10 shows, we got all our lines down, we got all our characters right, everything was fine. But certainly in rehearsals, it's like a Mensa puzzle. You know, which character comes next, where am I standing, what's my line, what's my accent? And it's really an achievement as an actor to be able to do a production like that, because you feel, now I've learnt this, surely there can't be anything out there that's harder to learn than what I've just learnt. Because you may have productions out there, plays out there, where there's more lines to learn, but at least you only have to be one character. In this, you're doing 16 different characters between us. I think we had 7. I had 7, and David, who was my co-lead, had 9. 7 different characters, all different accents, and if you can learn that, I really honestly think you can learn anything. Even Hamlet's nothing compared to that. It's just a lot of lines, but at least it's only one character, one accent.
Yeah, definitely. I think I would most definitely get confused and forget. I'd need a prompt somewhere. Who am I?
Yes, we had 2 prompts actually. They alternated between that, so they did a good job. But
So we talked about your latest production, and this saw you having to switch between an English, American, Scottish, and an Irish accent. Oof, wow, I don't think I could do that. But how easy or difficult is that to master?
very difficult. It's hard enough really to learn the different accents, but then to be able to suddenly switch from Scottish straight into Irish, straight back to American. There are certain portions of the play where you have about 6 lines of dialogue that is just you, and you'll be one character, then the next line of dialogue will be you as another character with another accent, then you go back into another character with another. It's such a confusion and a kerfuffle and a muddle of all sorts of accents, but it's great once you learn them all. And for David and I, David's my co-actor on stage, we were quite fortunate that we've had quite a bit of experience between us, so doing the accents itself wasn't too much of an issue. We came into it a bit of ahead of the game. We didn't really have to learn the accents as well, more sort of just relearn them, if that makes sense. So it wasn't too difficult, but it's a challenge having to switch between the two, especially in rehearsals. There was a lot of times where we'd slip into the wrong accent for the wrong character, or sometimes for some random reason we'd slip into a South African accent. There's no South African accent in the whole thing. We start doing a Welsh accent or a Geordie accent or something like that. It's quite difficult. It's quite difficult, but it's something that you have to learn, as you do when you do any new project. Is a new challenge, and that's what's so good about it, is you're testing yourself, you're pushing yourself, and you're learning new things. And that's why, going back to what I said earlier, I think if you can do that, there's nothing else out there that would be any harder than that. So you sort of done the hardest thing, as it were.
So as well as theatre acting, you've also appeared in a few TV commercials as well since we last spoke.
Yes, I've been very fortunate. I think when we last spoke, I'd just done a commercial for The Guardian and Observer newspaper that was on in cinemas for a couple of months and online for a year. I've also done a commercial for Cadbury's chocolate. We went out to Barcelona to film that, which was a great experience. That was only on in the Australian and New Zealand markets, though. So British actors filming in Spain for Australia and New Zealand only. Such is the nature of globalisation and the business. That's how that worked. And I also did a commercial for laterooms.com, which is an online hotel booking comparison site. That was on television for 2 weeks in the United Kingdom, and that was filmed in London. And I also have done a commercial for Virgin Atlantic. I only had a very small role in that. I had some dialogue in it, but they ended up in the edit cutting all the dialogue out, and they just had a voiceover for the whole thing. So it's more sort of like a montage clip of office workers. But that was filmed in London, and that was sadly online only, I think, for a year. I don't think they ever made it to TV. So it was a good year last year, a very good year.
You also do Punch and Judy shows. How did that come about?
Yes, I do Punch and Judy shows in the Surrey area. Selfless promotion and plugging here. If you want to book a Punch and Judy show, go to Punch on Tour, Tour, punchontour.com. That's my website. I studied puppetry as part of my university degree. Again, something that you necessarily wouldn't do when you go to drama school, so another string to your bow. And I did a dissertation on Punch and Judy. I worked with a Punch and Judy performer who performs on the streets of London. He's a street punch performer, and I spent a summer with him collecting the money as he was performing the show, which is a role known as the bottler. That's the man out the front collecting the money off the audience while the showman's doing all the hard work in the booth doing the show. I studied with him, and then I went to America for 2 years, and when I came back, he agreed to pass the tradition on to me in terms of he made a set of puppets, set of dolls for me. He taught me the show. I was his apprentice, and after about a year and a half of working with him, because it takes a long time to make everything, it's not something you just buy off the internet and bam, you're a Punch and Judy performer, although there are lots out there who claim to be showmen through that route. It's a lot of work, it's a lot of technique, it's a lot of skill. I then did my first performance in Houston in Texas in the United States in 2013, and since then I've been doing shows all around Surrey, carnivals, fetes, festivals, weddings, school fetes, birthday parties. Greenwich Museum I did some shows for a couple of months ago, and it's been a great addition to my repertoire, as it were, and a great tradition and an honour to be able to have that and pass that on, and to show children the tradition of Punch and Judy, and for them to see a live puppet show, which sadly is something that a lot of children don't see nowadays. Not only not seeing live theatre, but seeing a puppet show as well. A lot of everything now is through a screen, television, computer games, iPads, you name it. So for them to actually go out and see a live puppet show, I think is really special. And the feedback is amazing as well from the children. They love it.
What is it you like about Punch and Judy?
The money. Getting paid.
I love it.
That's what I like about Punch and Judy. If you want to be sentimental about it, you could say it's passing the tradition on. I think really it's important for children to experience live theatre, and be that through a puppet show or going to a local theatre or going to the West End and seeing a show. That's important, I think, as well. Showing children puppetry, and it's a bit of fun as well. It's just getting the kids to laugh. That's the best thing about it, is hearing the kids laugh and giving that sort of sense of magic over to them. A lot of them come round the back afterwards and want to know who's in there, and I don't come out because I think that spoils the illusion of it as well. It's just giving kids, another experience as opposed to the same old television shows, the same old computer games. It's something live, interactive, and that makes them laugh, and that's the best thing about it.
So, of course, Punch and Judy has been going for a long, long time over the years. Do you think it's changed for the modern day time?
I think it's changed because of social pressures. I don't necessarily agree with the changes, but at the end of the day, you've got to get the money coming in, so it's the person who's booking you that you've got to appeal to. There are changes over time in terms of the traditional characters, such as the devil, have gone, and they're normally now replaced with a ghost instead. There's the black servant, who's no longer politically correct for obvious reasons, so he's gone from the show. There are a lot of taming down of the violence in it, which I don't do in my show because the kids love it, and the kids know it's only a puppet show, and it's more the adults who have the issue with it rather than the children. Another victim of political correctness and social pressures is the hangman, who's gone from the show. I still have the hangman in my show. If people don't want him in there, I can switch him out. But as part of my show, the hangman is in there. It's a part of the history, it's a part of the show, the tradition. It doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with public executions by having the hangman in your show. It doesn't mean that children are then going to go around and be advocates of corporal punishment, but it's something that's part of the show. It's a tradition, and kids love it. It's all fun. It's no different to Tom and Jerry, and Jerry whacking Tom around the head with a frying pan, or kids playing games where they go around shooting people up and carjacking. So I think it's all a bit of light humour and light entertainment as well. And actually, the term slapstick comedy comes from Punch and Judy. Punch hits people with his stick, which is a slapstick. And I would like to point out Punch does receive some beatings of his own. It's not just him going around as a violent person. And the term slapstick comedy actually comes from Punch and Judy and the slapstick that he has. So it's great fun for the kids, and that's what it should be viewed as, a bit of light-hearted entertainment. If we get too serious about these things, then we eradicate those forms of entertainment from society, and I think that's a shame.
Joseph Booton, thank you very much. And as they say in Theatreland, break a leg.